Welcome back. In our last episode, we challenged the way we think about financial freedom. We talked about the difference between being free from something and being free for something. And if you remember, I left you with a question. Financial freedom means being free to what? Today, I'd like to ask a question that's just as important. What are you actually saving for? Now, at first, that might sound like an odd question coming from a financial planner. You might be thinking, well, I'm saving for retirement, or I'm saving for my future. But let me ask it a little differently. Imagine we sat down for coffee and I asked you, what is all of this saving supposed to make possible in your life? Could you answer in one sentence? Not how much you're saving, not where you're investing, not which funds you own, but what all of this is ultimately meant to accomplish. Because here's something I've noticed over the years. Many successful professionals can tell me exactly how much they save every month, but very few can clearly explain what those savings are ultimately for. And I don't think that's because they're irresponsible. In fact, it's usually the opposite. They're incredibly disciplined. The challenge isn't discipline, the challenge is direction. As you listen today, I'd like you to think about one question. If someone sincerely asked you, what are you saving for? Could you answer in one clear sentence? Don't answer it yet. Just let that question stay with you as we go through today's conversation. At the end, I'd love for you to share your answer in the comments. I'm genuinely curious how each of us defines the destination we're working toward. And if you've never intentionally worked through what financial freedom actually looks like for your own life, I've created a free financial freedom blueprint that can help. It walks you through the same questions we use in planning conversations to define what you're really building toward before you start talking about numbers. You can download it using the link in the description. One of the things I admire most about many of the people I work with is their discipline. They save consistently, they invest regularly, they avoid unnecessary debt, they buy insurance, they build emergency funds. They're doing many of the things financial advisors recommend. And yet, despite all that discipline, many still carry a quiet uncertainty. They wonder, am I saving enough? Am I making the right decisions? Am I actually getting closer to my destination? Those are reasonable questions. But I've come to believe they aren't the first questions we should ask. Because before we ask whether we're making progress, we should first ask, progress toward what? That's a very different conversation. Imagine getting into your car and opening your GPS. The map works perfectly, it knows every road, it knows every shortcut, it can even estimate exactly when you'll arrive. But there's one problem. You never entered a destination. No matter how advanced the GPS is, it can't tell you whether you're making good progress. Because progress only has meaning when there's a destination. By the way, if this conversation is helping you think about financial planning differently, I'd appreciate it if you take a moment to like the video and subscribe. My goal isn't simply to talk about money. It's to help you make wiser financial decisions by first becoming clear about the life you're trying to build. If that's valuable to you, I'd love to have you join us for the rest of the journey. I think many financial plans quietly suffer from the same problem. We've become very good at measuring movement. We track our savings, our investment returns, our net worth, our retirement accounts. We're constantly asking, am I ahead of last year? But we rarely stop and ask, ahead toward where? This is where I think many of us unintentionally reverse the relationship between money and life. Saving becomes the goal. Growing investments becomes the goal. Accumulating wealth becomes the goal. But those were never supposed to be the goal. They're the vehicle. The real question is, what kind of life are those resources meant to support? Maybe your answer is spending more time with your family while your children are still young. Maybe it's caring for your parents without worrying about the financial impact. Maybe it's having the freedom to choose meaningful work instead of simply the highest paying opportunity. Maybe it's supporting causes you deeply believe in. Maybe it's building something that will outlast you. Notice something? Every one of those answers begins with life, not money. Money simply makes those possibilities more attainable. And I think that's an important shift. Because once life defines the destination, money finally has a purpose. Something interesting happens once you've clearly defined what you're saving toward. Many financial decisions become easier. You stop comparing yourself to everyone else. You become less distracted by every new investment trend. You're less tempted to chase returns simply because someone else is doing well. Why? Because your decisions are no longer being driven by comparison, they're being guided by purpose. You begin asking different questions like, does this decision move me closer to the life I'm trying to build? Does this expense support what's truly important to me? Does this investment help fund the future I've intentionally chosen? Those are much healthier questions than simply asking, can I make more? Because once purpose becomes clear, financial decisions become increasingly intentional. Now we're finally ready for the question that often gets asked first: how much is enough? Notice we didn't begin there, because without a destination, that question is almost impossible to answer. Enough for what? Enough to retire? Enough to support your family? Enough to change careers? Enough to leave a legacy? I mean, the answer depends entirely on the life you're trying to build. And that's why in our planning process, we eventually talk about something we call your financial freedom number. Not because everyone should have the same number, and certainly not because there's some magical target everyone should chase. Your financial freedom number is simply the financial expression of the destination you've already defined. It answers one practical question: if this is the life I want my money to support, what resources will that realistically require? Notice the order: life first, number second; purpose first, planning second. I think that's the order many people unintentionally reverse. So, let me bring you back to the question we started with. What are you actually saving for? Not the account, not the investment, not retirement as an abstract idea. What future are you intentionally trying to create? Because I've found that faithful saving by itself isn't enough. Faithful stewardship begins when your saving has a clearly defined destination. And once that destination becomes clear, your financial decisions can stop feeling like isolated choices. They become connected steps toward a life you've intentionally chosen. Now, here's where the conversation gets even more interesting. If we know where we're going, what actually gets us there? Is financial freedom simply the result of making better financial decisions? Or is there something deeper that shapes every decision we make? That's exactly what we'll explore in the next episode. I'm Juan Casas from Beacon Wealth Advisory. I'll see you in the next episode.